Hello, and thank you so much for tuning in to the She Can Ball podcast. I'm your host, Mahi Jariwala. Today, we're joined by the author of the Shelly Bean, the Sports Queen book series, Shelly Boyum-Breen. Before we get into today's interview, I want to thank Wake Up Water for sponsoring today's episode. Wake Up Water is a hydration energy mix with caffeine to keep you energized and electrolytes to keep you hydrated. I love drinking it in the morning or before a workout, and I can do it guilt-free because Wake Up Water only has 5 calories and 0 grams of sugar. It comes in 3 amazing flavors: lemon, orange, and coconut, so make sure you check them out. I will leave their website in the story notes. Thank you so much for coming on today.
My pleasure. It's an honor to be with you.
So to start off, tell us about your childhood and how did sports influence you growing up?
Well, I had a pretty, in a lot of ways, I had a very beautiful childhood in that I played a million different things and had a lot of freedom to play the things that I wanted in the neighborhood. I also had a very tumultuous childhood in that I had too much freedom, not much supervision, and experienced a lot of trauma in my life. And so when I look back on childhood, it's a mixed bag of things. I will say that sports saved my life. Sports kept me alive. Sports kept me engaged in school and with a network of friends. But when I was little, I thought I was going to be like the first woman to be a pitcher in the major league. And so I would practice. I would take Scotch tape, that thick white tape, and I'd tape, like a box on the side of our garage, which had like this metal aluminum siding, something like that. And I would take a bucket of balls and I would just practice pitching forever and ever until, my dad came home and got mad because there were dents all over the side. And I would practice every scenario I possibly could for basketball out on the court. I saw a video of, I wish I could remember, Barry Sanders, Detroit Lions running back. And I saw this NFL video of him training to be a running back. And I thought, that's what I want to do. And so I found we had these sand pits in the woods not far from our house. And so I would run up and down these sand pits thinking someday there's going to be an NFL documentary about the training that I did as a kid. I had a pretty big imagination, but I loved playing everything that I possibly could. And unfortunately, when it came time to, like, all the guys in the neighborhood were my best friends. There weren't any girls. And when they started playing basketball, there wasn't a girls' team. And so I ended up joining and being the only girl the first year. And then the next year, a few more girls joined, and eventually there were girls' teams. I really wanted to play hockey. And my mom didn't think it was a good idea because I would get hurt. Yeah. And I mostly wanted to play football. And so I think I was the best running back in the neighborhood. There was 5 of us, so the pickings were slim. But when the guys got to all go out for Little League football and put on the equipment and do all the things, I was just devastated that I wasn't allowed to do it because I was a girl. And it wasn't necessarily that the association didn't allow me to. Like, we never even got to that point. My parents just didn't think it was a good idea for me to do that. And so, so that was my first entree into hearing the word no in my life related to sports and things.
And I know, like, if you see behind you, the Shelly Bean, the Sports Queen kind of logo is with the basketball. Is there a reason behind that?
Well, there's a picture of me. So the book series is based on me, age 6 or 7. And there's an actual picture of me. I think I have it on some of my social media pages at that age. And I'm holding a basketball like that. And I'm wearing one of my brother's tennis shoes, which are like, 10 sizes too big. And they're shorts. And they're like, I think it's a Minnesota Gophers t-shirt. So the first illustrator that I had who made this all come to life, she actually studied my childhood photo album for a couple of weeks before she came up with the character of Shelly Bean. So yeah, it's actually, isn't she cute?
Yeah, I love it. I think
Based
it's
on
really
me,
awesome.
right?
So let's like start from the start. Like, what was the first like interaction that you had that made you even think of starting Shelly Bean?
Oh man. So I had coached, I had taught, I was working for the Minnesota Lynx in the WNBA on this business side. And I had just started a nonprofit in Minnesota to help Minnesota girls who couldn't afford to play sports. So I was doing all these things, right? And I found myself, I can't remember if I was presenting or what was happening, but I found myself in a fifth grade elementary school classroom for the day. And while I was in that classroom, I came across a Scholastic book order form. And I was like, oh man, I totally remember these as a kid. Like I would pick out, I didn't get to order very much, but what I would look for is like NFL's greatest hits and NBA's greatest dunks and like puppy posters. And because there were no books that I could relate to. I did not enjoy reading at all as a kid. One, I couldn't really sit still very often. But two, I just couldn't relate. I was not a princess. I was not a girl on the prairie. I was not a boy. And so I thought, God, millions of girls are playing sports now. I'm involved in women's professional sports. I started this nonprofit. I wonder what books are out there. And this was 2006. And as I started paging through the order form, all I could find related to girls were books about horseback riding and cheerleading. And I was ticked off. And so I just started thinking, like, what would I have wanted to read when I was a kid? And I started making notes and playing around with ideas and telling people about what I had seen, or not seen for that matter. And the more and more I talked to people about it and thought about it for myself, I thought, somebody's got to do something about this. And so I waited for 3 years for somebody to do something about it, while I kept making notes and playing around with. I certainly did not consider myself a writer. I'd never really written anything like that ever in my life, and I wasn't even a reader. So I feel like imposter syndrome. But yeah, so that was the start of it. I saw that there still were not books that represented what I was as a little girl. And I knew that something needed to be done about that.
I like that you even said like you waited 3 years to see, because I think most people wait their whole life waiting for something and they don't end up actually doing it. So like, what was the first step in actually creating the book?
Well, I reached out to people. So, you play sports, you know what it means to be a part of a team. And that's how I've operated my whole life. So there are things that I'm good at, and there are things that I am definitely not good at, but I know how to find people who are. And so I started to build this team. I reached out to people who introduced me to an illustrator. I reached out to people who introduced me to an editor. This lovely couple who does publishing on the side. And I just started to ask for feedback and understand, what would it take to make something like this? Would I need to raise money? And so I just learned about the process and started practicing my writing. And then I developed the scripts, the drafts of the first 3 books, and thought, man, I am going to Hollywood. Like, I packaged these up. I even posted on social media, and I sent them out to publishers and agents all over New York. And I thought, my phone is going to be ringing off the hook any second, because I'm delivering this gold mine to them, and I'm going to be on Good Morning America with Robin Roberts someday, and it's going to be amazing. Well, so the next 3 years, I collected rejection letters. This is one, we received your request. That was it. Great letters like that are very heartfelt. And then letters that would say, we really think this is a great idea, it's just not for us. But that was it. And as I continued to research, I started doing my own research. What is available? And I started to find that less than 2% of children's books that were published at that time, and I think still now, have a female character who's physically active in them. And then when I say physically active, that was like a narrow margin. That meant like if she is in a movement, if she's in action. So if she's sitting on the carpet with her boy Aladdin flying, that's considered action, right? So when we look at, is she playing sport? It's less than 2%. And if we say, is she the main character? Oh no. I mean, for her to be the main character, she's hypersexualized. She's playing on a boys' team and she's overdeveloped as a young girl. And it's about how she kisses the boy on the main team. So the more I realized I needed to change those percentages, nobody was doing it. And I was waiting too long. And so I actually decided to start my own publishing label. And I did a Kickstarter campaign and took the risk of doing it over the holidays, thinking people would be thinking about gifts for the following year. And in 30 days, we raised just over $20,000 and I was able to get things started.
Well, so like, what is it like to start a publishing label? I don't know too much about the book industry, but like, yeah, what does that look like?
It looks like a lot of unknowns. It looks like a lot of making things work for yourself. There is not, I've had so many people come to me and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing that. What do I do? And I will tell you that it's different for everybody. And the industry is constantly changing. So when I first started, it was like $240,000 to have a like a company, quote unquote, self-publish you. Now, the more and more publishing companies, from my experience, are saying, why don't you do it on your own? Prove to us that it's a good marketing tool, it's a good sales tactic, it's a good product, and then come back to us. It's gotten easier and cheaper to do. And so it's just a matter of what the end goal is. And so I developed a team, and it's a network of people. And there's a printer and a warehouse in my hometown, and they gave me the friends and family discount because the people that I know there that are running it, I played sports with. And this couple that put everything together and helped me with the paperwork for the Library of Congress, like I paid them a fee. And the illustrator, she was passionate about it. And her daughter actually started to fall in love with sports as we were doing this project together. So I paid her. And yeah, I mean, I guess that's about where it's at. And so I own the rights, I own the trademark. It's now my product to shop how I please. But that requires insane amount of discipline, hard work, and hearing no a million times over, or no thank you, which I always just assume is not yet.
Yeah, no, because I didn't realize that it took so long, and like that can be so hard to be waiting and just getting those no's. Like, how did you like stay motivated when everybody's telling you that like, no, it's not a good idea, or like, no, we don't want to do it with you?
Well, I'll tell you that so I published 3 books at once, the first go around, and that took over 6 years. Actually, it took almost 9 years. So if you think about 2006 is when I first started writing, and I published in August of 2014 is when they finally were like tangible in the warehouse in my hands. Okay, so 8.5 years. The 4th book took 9 months because I learned how to do it. I already had a team in place. I had some revenue coming in from the other books, so I didn't have to fundraise as much. And then the 5th book took 3 months. So it's gotten easier as I've gone and kept those relationships.
I have a question for you, like on a personal scale, with like involving people with Shelly Bean, because I know you like to do that, and I know you like to get people's advice and stuff. But one thing I kind of fear with that, and with Chicken Ball specifically, is a lot of people tend to think that you owe them something, or they think they have some part of what you have. So how do you kind of approach that when you take people's help, or like you reach out to people for advice?
Oh, I love that question. I try to operate from a place of trust. So if somebody's going to offer their services or their guidance or their advice, and I've asked them for it, I'm going to trust that they're going to say what they need from me in that. And I'm also going to be really clear up front. Um, this is the situation, certain person, where I have some funds that I can pay you. Does this amount work? Let's sign a contract. I don't do things without contracts when it comes to payment. But the others, I am constantly building up my team. Like, I consider you on my team now. How can you help me reach more people and share the message of Shelly Bean? How can you help me do it better? How can you help me do it faster? What are all the voices that I am missing? Because I am just a Minnesota white girl who grew up with privilege, man. So I don't I don't know what I don't know. Who should I be talking to that can help me? And so I'm just constantly asking people, I would love your help. You sound like somebody with integrity and trust and person that, that I want to engage with. And I don't think the team can be too big.
Yeah, I think those are some great tips in there. So I'll definitely try to use them. Look, when did you first realize that the book was like gonna be a hit? And like what was your initial reaction to all that?
Um, so it makes me smile because the first and the things that keep me going are when I get pictures and videos from parents and teachers of kids. That's it. Like, I don't care if I sell another book in my life. I really don't. Like, everything from here on out has been icing on the cake. My goal was to make the books, therefore change the percentage. And I didn't know what else would come after that. It turns out that kids really like authors. I didn't know that because I didn't like reading. And so I have gotten to do all these author visits. I've talked to over 70,000 elementary school kids pre-pandemic in 3.5 years, and over 10,000 adults. And they pay me to come and share the message of Shelly Bean. And then I get to meet all these little cherubs who are like eating up this message of perseverance. And they want to tell me about all the times that they fell down and got back up and tried again. And they want to show me their basketball tricks, and they want to tell me about how they love to play catch with their parent, or they, love to play with the kids in the neighborhood. And so it's those those messages from those kids and those families that, man, that's everything. That's how I knew if that's all it is, I've done my job.
Yeah, I think even when I heard like the first idea of it, like thinking back to like when I was younger, like one of the book series that I loved was like Pinkalicious. And so one of like the storylines was like she makes lemonade, and like pink lemonade. And so I remember like I wanted to make pink lemonade, and I asked my mom, and she was like, "Whoa there, like we can make normal lemonade, but like we'll hold up on the pink part." But I think that in general, like when kids read books or TV shows, like you want to do like what they do because it makes it seem so fun. And in Shelly Bean's situation, it's so easy because you can just go out and play sports, and you're being Shelly Bean.
Yeah, yeah. And that's why it was really important to me that, so I was a physical education teacher for a number of years before I went into all my other lives. And I was a coach. And so it was really important to me that there was learning involved, not just inspiration. This isn't, no offense to other books, but this is not a story about a friendly turtle who, meets a rabbit. This eats a dandelion. I don't know. There's a message and there's purpose. And so there's a story. Shelly Bean wants to learn a new sport. She's excited about it. Her imagination is crazy, like mine was. She's got a group of friends, like I did. She's got a trusty dog that follows her everywhere, just like I did. She's got brothers, just like I did, right? And she is not good at things when she first tries. Rarely are any of us. And so I can talk to kids in schools and whatever in the message and say, I'm using sports as the metaphor, but think about the first time you have a sleepover. It might not go really well because you might get homesick, but that doesn't mean you never do it again. Think about reading and math, or trying music, or trying new foods. This is about perseverance and not giving up. And then at the back of every story, there are tips on how to do that sport. So it might be learning how to throw, learning how to dribble a soccer ball. And families can do that together. Teachers can do that. Siblings can teach their other siblings, so that there's engagement and something more meaningful, tangible afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. I kind of want to go back. I know you talked about like working like professionally on the business side of things with the Minnesota Lynx and the New York Liberty, but like how did those opportunities arise and what did you learn from them?
So when I was back in 2003, I was still coaching high school basketball and teaching, and my job got cut. And so I suddenly found myself without employment. It was August. I was expecting the school year to start in September. And I have always been a relationship builder. And a couple years previous, when the Lynx had started, I was invited to coach at the inaugural training camp. And so I had connections within. And so I just reached out to some people and said, what can I do? Like, how can I be involved in this organization? I don't know what that is, but how can I be involved? And so they brought me on as a sales rep. My job was to, sell youth basketball time on the court before a Timberwolves game, youth camps on the weekends, that sort of thing. And fell in love with, I enjoy sales. I enjoy finding out what people need and getting a solution for them. And so, and this was basketball. Like, how awesome is that? It also happened to be the year that the Timberwolves and Kevin Garnett went to the Western Conference Finals. So it was pretty darn exciting. It was one of those winning years.
Wow.
But it was shortly thereafter, I think like 9 months, that the Lynx decided to start a dedicated sales department. And so I started that dedicated sales department, hired my own staff, and then that led to doing some training at what we called WNBA University. So we got the sales reps from the different teams together, and then I had the opportunity to do sales consulting for the league for the 10th anniversary All-Star game, which was at Madison Square Garden. So at the time, my contract was with with the Liberty and the league. And so I just thought it was like so amazing that I got to fly from, I'm just a small town girl in northern Minnesota. And here I am flying to New York every other week and have this cube at Madison Square Garden, and going to a luncheon where the top 10 WNBA players, Katie Smith and all, and Madeline Albright is the keynote at the luncheon. I mean, so that's kind of how it started. And I was doing that for about 4 or 5 years. And as I was doing that, saw the need for how many girls were not able to play sports because they couldn't afford it. And that's when I decided to start a nonprofit. It was called Foundation 9, which is the Roman numeral 9 for Title IX, and the Let Me Play grants. And so I was doing that on the side. And then obviously, as I was doing that and starting up the nonprofit and giving away grants, that's when I also started writing. So somewhere in there, I got my master's degree too. Yeah.
Wow. Look, what was creating that foundation like, and like what was your experience like teaching these girls sports?
Yeah. It was almost identical to the writing process. I reached out and said, who should I be talking to? This is my idea. Who should I be talking to? Who could help? Who wants to sit on the board and offer their skills? Who has some money to help us get started? Ann Bancroft is a dear friend of mine. I had sat on their grant selection committees, so I had learned how to do the grant selection process. And so it was, again, like building teams of people to make this mission happen. And we got people from all walks of life in the communities to sit on these grant committees and help us get the word out to the girls who needed help the most. And I remember the first phone call I know that there's been, I don't know, something over 1,500 girls in Minnesota that have benefited from the grants because they still exist. We merged with the Ann Bancroft Foundation. And I don't know, it could even be more. I'm not on the board anymore, but the first phone calls that I made to the first families were the night that Barack Obama was first elected. And I chose that night because I knew people would be home and I knew it was going to be a historic night. And it was a historic night for Foundation 9.
Yeah.
And one of the first families that I called, this young lady was 8 years old and she just wanted to play hockey. And her mom said, honey, brown girls don't play hockey. And she told her mom or her grandma, this one does. And we paid for her hockey fees and her equipment and got her started in the sport. And she's now, I think, a junior at the University of Minnesota on scholarship for hockey. And the goal wasn't about her being great. The goal was just her having the opportunity to hear yes when she asked for help and being able to try the sport. And it's paid off for her big time.
Yeah. I think in sports in general, it's important that it's emphasized like it's also okay to just play a sport and have fun with it and try to enjoy rather than just like, oh, I just want to get a scholarship or oh, this has to like help me get into college.
Yeah. I mean, to me, hundreds of times kids have asked me, how many trophies do you have? How many awards do you have? And I always say, I have none. Because when you're 47, you don't carry those around. But the things that I remember the most are the people, the meals, the pregame meals, the times that we got together on the weekends or in the off season when we had fun, those relationships, the moments. And I will tell you that I've lost more games in my life than I've ever won. And it's all these life lessons that I've learned and experiences that I've had that have made me who I am. Nothing to do with the successes. As a matter of fact, I will tell you that the story that I tell the most when I'm presenting is about a failure that I had. And I was about to become the first girl in my high school history to score 1,000 points in basketball. And there'd been a countdown kind of in the newspaper and, all these things. And so I play it up really big when I'm in the elementary schools. But bottom line is, I could not score in the first half. And in the third quarter, somebody, I don't know if it was the coach or another player on the other team, got a technical. And I had 999 points. So they sent me to the line for a technical, which means, you're alone. And under the basket is a newspaper photographer ready to capture the moment. And my teammates in the other team are at half court. And this is my senior year. I'd been on varsity since the end of 8th grade. I had the scoring records, all these things. And I airballed. I mean, the marching band was there. The cheerleaders had made a banner with my name on it. There was a bouquet of roses waiting for me at the scorer's table. And I airballed that shot. And that's the story that I tell more than anything when I'm in elementary schools or even with adults. Like, how do you respond in those moments? Do you throw a tantrum? Do you quit? Do you cry your eyes out? No, man, there's a team that is expecting you to be a part of them. And they need you to get back up and try again. And my teammates high-fived me and we kept playing. Eventually in the game, I scored a layup and, got all the stuff. But that wouldn't have happened if I would have quit, if I would have given up, right? And so it's just another example of perseverance that's happened in my life.
Yeah, I like that story. It's amazing. Yeah, I think in general, I think with basketball specifically, like anything that happens, like you have to just come right back to it, and I think that can be really hard and it's easy to just get lost in like thinking about all these like outside things or what people say, but like if you're not locked in, like it's not going to work out for you.
Yeah, you got to go on to the next play. Learn from it. What can I do different? Maybe nothing. Maybe it was just a situation, but all right, next play, on to the next thing. And I always think about it like you are going to have a million doors close in your life. And I always think about it like being smarter than a fly. So you see a fly like constantly trying to go out the same window. The window's closed, dude. If you just move like 3 feet to the right, you'll see that I've opened the other window. Go see what's on the other side, but you have to be willing to look for that open window or that open door. Because man, there's going to be dozens and hundreds of closed ones.
Yeah, I know. I think it can be hard to reach those and then go, yeah, just in general in life, whenever you reach like a closed door, it's always, oh, like, why isn't this working out? Why isn't this working out? But it's never like, okay, like, what can I do to find something that works? And I think sports helps you realize that, because you have to move on. There's no soaking in that moment, because if you do, like, you're gonna get subbed out. Like, it's very obvious. So you got to just move on. You got to keep going.
And you know what? After the game or the situation, I do think it's good to just feel it for a moment, like not stuff the feelings away, not ignore that you had pain about it or disappointment. Feel it and then move on. I think that's part of the healing journey too.
I think with me, it's like when I do that, I always feel like I end up just reliving that moment way too much. And then I over reflect and I overthink about what happens.
Oh, yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
We need to work on that for you.
I know, I do.
But that's part of the process, right? The fact that you even have awareness about that is the start. So the more that you are aware of it, and the sooner you're aware of it, the better chance you have to get yourself into a different mode, a different place.
Yeah, exactly. It's the first step.
You got it.
First step. But what's next for Shelly Bean?
I have no idea. I know what I'm trying to do. So to me, in order for girls and boys to have more exposure to Shelly Bean, the next step is to get her on screen. Whether that's through an app, that's a motion picture, it's a cartoon series, I don't know. But that is what I've been spending the last 2 years pounding the pavement, trying to get more doors open so that we can get Shelly Bean exposed to more kids across the world. And because the message is so important, it translates all cultures. More kids need to see themselves in books, in cartoons, on the screen. And so that's really my mission. Again, I've already done what I set out to do, but now I know the impact. And I just think that I've been hearing for so many years, oh my gosh, this is the perfect time for this. Yep, I've been hearing that for years. And you know what? Today is the perfect time for it. We need something like this more than ever. And there's so much momentum in girls and women's sports. And as you see in the Olympics playing out right now, I mean, 48% of the athletes are female. And so finally, we're starting to reach some parity there. But we have a lot of work to do. And if kids don't see what's possible, if they can't actually view it, it's harder for them to imagine it. And it's going to be that much more work. I will also say that over half of the readers of the book series are boys. And so to not discount, so often when we see a book about girls or a cartoon about girls, that we think it's for girls, but we don't think that when we see something about boys, right? And so I think it's really important to understand that boys are growing up with a strong female role model in their books because of Shelly Bean. Or they're even recognizing that they don't even see a gender with Shelly Bean. I mean, she's gender nonconforming. So there are a lot of kids who look at her and don't see gender. And I even have an example of that with one of the readers, a little boy who's like throwing a tantrum with his mom. He's like, I'm not reading any more books about girls, and I'm picking out my own book tonight. And he called girls grills because he was 4. And so his mom said to me, so I told him, go ahead and pick out your own book tonight. And he went over to the bookshelf and he grabbed Shelly Bean, the Sports Queen Skates at the hockey rink. And he was just so floored when she said, well, Shelly Bean's actually kind of a girl, he just didn't identify with it. So that's what I'm trying to do is create. I've written several episodes of a cartoon series. As you know, because you got to take a look at it, I wrote a draft of an animated short where Shelly Bean is teaching kids about Title IX. That was my first crack at that. And just using the sports community and sports world with ESPN and Disney and whatnot to try and make something happen.
You did a great job with that. I loved reading it, and I'm really excited to see when that comes on screen. I think a lot of young kids are going to love that as well. So it's very, really exciting stuff. And I'm really
I
happy
hope
for
they get
you.
to see it. Thank you.
Yeah. Lastly, do you have any advice for girls looking to pursue sports?
Yeah, do it. I mean, so I think one of the things that gets missed is one, there's so much more out there than just being the athlete. We need more female coaches, assistant coaches, athletic trainers, people in the front office, athletic directors. Like we need that. And there are so many opportunities. One of my dear childhood friends is one of the best sports photographers for Getty Images, and she is traveling the world, but she's one of only just a few that exist. I mean, sports photography, if you want to be sitting, you've got a talent for that and a passion for it, and you want to be sitting courtside the rest of your life, that is the way to go. You want to be telling the stories, journalism. We need to be hearing these stories, right? So I just think there's so much opportunity to be involved in sports, whether that is playing or all the other different avenues. And I'm proof of that. Like, I just keep reinventing ways that I can stay involved in girls and women's sports.
It's crazy. I think like nobody really thinks about all these different ways because nobody tells you these different ways you can stay in sport. That's why like when I have like different diverse people on the podcast, they tell me all these cool things they do. I'm like, that's crazy. Like you never even think about the possibility of that.
You know, there's so much opportunity, and unfortunately, it's not widely advertised because you haven't seen it. Right? And that goes back to the premise of what I'm trying to do is help more girls and women see what's possible, and we need more exposure and having these kinds of conversations. How about you just have a blockbuster podcast and keep sharing with people, you know, what's possible. I think it's phenomenal what you're doing, and I'm so inspired. And I've been listening on. I drive 4 hours every week to go visit my parents and spend the night, and I am listening to your podcast when I am on that drive now.
Well, thank you. And now I will be listening to our podcast soon. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on. I loved our conversation today.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Again, I want to thank Wake Up Water for sponsoring today's episode. Wake Up Water is a 2-in-1 hydration and energy mix with only 5 calories and 0 grams of sugar. Make sure you check their website out in the story notes. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you all next time.